Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from where you're watching me from. My name is Shem Kalafa. For Shem Speaks on YouTube, Shem K_Sai on TikTok, and Shem Kalafa on Facebook. So today we are going to start on a new podcast series that I have been thinking about for some time. It's called Shem K Unfiltered. Shem K Unfiltered will basically be looking at different issues that affect us or that we interact with in society, looking at social issues, looking at economic issues, looking at governance issues, and how we are going to develop and advance them so that we make lives better and we make life more meaningful as we interact in society. One of the key things that we will be looking at today, or one of the things that we will begin with today, is basically indigenous foods and seeds and why they matter and their impact to nutritional health. And even as we think about that, we will be discussing into biophysiological health systems and prevailing conditions in adults and children. And then we press more deeper into the healthcare system and how the healthcare system has been affected due to inaccessible basic nutrition, making people being prone to disease. You know, once someone is not able to get the necessary nutrients that they require, it means that their bodies are not able to withstand certain diseases and certain ailments that they face in their day-to-day basis. One of the key things that the government is mandated to do is to provide or to ensure quality food and nutrition, to eradicate poverty within society, to ensure effective disease control, and at the same time also offer quality education to its people. These are the four areas that the government is supposed to provide its services or demonstrate its ability to serve its people so that it becomes a more efficient and a more effective government in handling or in meeting the needs of its people. So for today, we will be focusing on indigenous foods and seeds. And the key thing of food and seed is that once we are able to focus on food, once we are able to ensure that we have adequate and necessary food and nutritional provisions, then that will have a ripple effect in all these other sectors. Because once we focus on food, then basically it minimizes the proclivity towards certain diseases, the proclivity towards certain ailments that may affect adults and children alike. Once we begin to increase our food uptake and we begin to increase the capacity of developing quality food, then we will be looking at issues on how it is going to eradicate poverty. And then when you have healthier people in society, when you have people who are able to provide for themselves, for their families, people who are able to sustain themselves with the food that they are producing, then quality education now becomes another factor. So today we are basically going to look at what are some of the benefits of the indigenous foods and seeds. And one of the first ones is basically it boosts the immune system and the cellular vitality. The body becomes more resistant and resilient to diseases and disease infection. One of the more effective ways of ensuring that the body is healthy and is able to withstand any disease infection is when we have the basic nutritional content that the body requires. And I remember even in my biology class, we looked at the three basic food nutrients that a human being requires. We are looking at vitamins, we're looking at proteins, we're looking at carbohydrates. So once these food elements are in the body in a balanced form, so it means that one is not necessarily outdoing the other, then this person is able to build healthy cells. They increase their cellular vitality, their cellular strength and stamina, not just to regenerate, but to also build the cell's capacity to resist and withstand disease. Now imagine if this person has healthy cells within their body. It means that they are able to live productive lives. It means that they are able to pursue different engagements that they will be undertaking in their day-to-day basis. And as they do that, then they become more productive members individually within society. So when you have healthy individuals, people who are eating healthy, people who are having quality nutrition intake in their body systems, their cells become healthy, their cells are able to withstand disease, and as their cells withstand disease, they become healthier and productive members of society because of their body's ability to withstand and resist disease. The second thing is it can be useful for medicinal purposes. Clinical studies can actually be conducted to improve patient health with focus on nutritional practices. Quality nutrition or quality food helps to boost cellular vitality. Now, studies can therefore be conducted to investigate what elements or what attributes within those particular food substances are adding value in the cells. And how can they be tailor-made to increase the cell's efficiency within the medical space? Because believe me, when someone gets unwell or when someone is having a certain disease and they go to hospital for whatever kind of treatment that they are looking for, that medicines alone will not be enough to ensure that this person bounces back to health. One of the things that will need to be investigated is this. What are some of the deficiencies that they are having within their cells? And how can these deficiencies be mitigated so that their cells are no longer lacking in those necessary nutrients to help them become healthier individuals? Food can be useful for medicinal purposes. Food actually can be the first primary medicine that a person requires, and then maybe the other medications can be now utilized to boost that particular cellular vitality that is needed, or to try and eliminate that particular disease that this person is having. So when someone is eating quality and nutritious food, then it means that the medicines that they will be taking will work faster because the cells have gained the necessary strength that they need to take in that medicine and to be able to utilize whatever additions that have been given, whatever enhancements that have been made within that particular medicine to boost their immunity and their resistance to that particular disease. So it means that therefore research needs to be done, studies need to be conducted. Of course, there are some that have already been conducted in the past, which will provide reliable information on what kind of nutritional intake that a person needs in order to ensure that they are able to treat or to find treatment within the nutrition that they undertake. The third thing about indigenous seeds and indigenous food is that they replenish the soil nutrients and increase soil fertility. They balance between nitrogen and alkaline substances, making the soil to regenerate itself. Something about natural-based seeds and natural-based foods is that it's easy for them to decompose in the earth. And because of that ability to decompose, one of the chemicals that is being released from the natural foods is actually nitrogen. And there is nitrogen, and then there are some other alkaline elements by different kinds of food that are being decomposed within the earth. As these elements are being reintroduced back to the earth, the soil is able to regenerate itself. The soil is able to regain its fertility, its natural fertility, for it to be able to gain back its ability to have more nutrients for the next seeds that are going to be sown in that soil. And that's the importance of indigenous seeds and indigenous food. They add more value, they add more nutritional value into the soil, and making the soil more adequate for the next planting season, for the next crops that are going to be introduced back into that soil. The soil is able to receive these crops back because the soil has been given the necessary nutrients by any indigenous seeds that have been planted within it. The next thing is that it increases the soil aeration through boring crawlers. And boring crawlers is basically things like earthworms, things like beetles that sometimes usually habitate within the ground. And these earthworms and these beetles, they eat the organic material and break it down further for root penetration and the soil nutrients uptake. So what does this mean? Whenever this food has, these nutrients rather, have been decomposed within the soil, it provides even for the smaller creatures that crawl within the soil, that make their habitation within the soil. Things like earthworms, things like those beetles that I've just mentioned. Once they begin to eat up some of these nutrients, as they bore through the soil, they create an aerial filtration system that allows air to actually seep into the soil. They break up the soil even further. And even as they ingest excess matter, it actually adds more value in the soil nutrients, especially if it is from the indigenous seeds that have been planted or the indigenous crops that are growing within that area, and some of them have been decomposing within that particular land. So what this does is that it increases the roots penetration of any other vegetation that may be planted within that area. And that's why sometimes whenever we think about some of the forests that we have in, especially in Africa, these forests, they do well by themselves. They just grow by themselves. And part of the reason why they are able to grow by themselves is that decomposition and growth has been sustained, and it has created a conducive ecosystem for these crawlers, for these creatures, these small creatures, to be able to create their habitat within the soil, to be able to aerate the soil for more crops, for more seedlings to be able to grow. Just think about it this way. For a seedling to germinate, to become a strong crop of whatever kind, it requires oxygen within the soil. That's the first thing it requires. And what gives oxygen in the soil? It's these creatures that keep boring and keep tunneling their way through the soil in order to be able to add or to supply the necessary oxygen that is needed for those seeds to germinate. Now think about it this way. If those creatures are not present, if there is no decomposition, it means these creatures are not able to habitate within that particular area or within that particular section of land. And if that's the case, then it means any seed that is sown there will not be able to germinate. And so that's why these indigenous seeds and these indigenous crops, these indigenous foods are important, because their decomposition rate allows these creatures to be able to aerate the soil where they habitate. And this in turn provides a conducive environment for more seeds to be grown. The other thing is it increases the general vitality in men and women and strengthens their capacity to procreate. Healthier human beings and families are thus developed to ensure that there are more healthier growing children. So I talked about cellular immunity and cellular vitality earlier. Now this means that once this person is able to take in the necessary nutrients from the indigenous foods, which basically is what the cell DNA of a human being requires. It means that that cell DNA becomes healthy for them. It becomes healthy for partners and ensures that they themselves give rise to healthy children. So health basically begins with the food that we eat. And if the food that we eat is nutritious enough, it has the necessary nutrients within it, then it adds value to the cells, it adds value to vitality of both the man and the woman. And once they decide to have children, then it means that they have a higher chance of procreation. They have a higher chance of raising healthier children. Now, we've been having issues where some mothers have experienced miscarriages for one reason or the other. Some men have experienced impotency for one reason or the other. But the interesting thing about that is that it is all connected to that one factor: food and nutrition. So if they had adequate food and nutrition, I believe it will have minimized the chances of those occurrences within their body systems. It will increase the mother's ability to hold the child, to nurture the child as they are developing at their fetal stage in their womb. It will increase the father's ability to be procreative. We've had issues of low sperm count and all that. So it means that this man will be able to nurture healthy sperm count within themselves. It means that the woman will also be able to nurture healthy ovaries within their reproductive systems. And because of that, they will be able to nurture and develop healthier children. All this points back to indigenous food, because the cells of the human body can only be able to adapt to a particular DNA sequence. And this DNA sequence is within the nature of food that is able to reproduce of itself. Food that you are able to take in, and you are able also to plant the same seed back to regenerate itself. And it is no surprise why these are some of the things that were first created. When you look at the creation accounts, these are some of the things that God ensured that were created first. He ensured that there was enough food in terms of different seeds and different plants that could regenerate. It means in that particular wisdom, we need to ask ourselves, what are some of the indigenous foods that we need to invest back into the soil? Because that particular food that we invest back into the soil is what will increase our nutrition, is what will raise our nutritional capacities to be able to procreate as human beings and give rise to healthier children, who will in turn give rise to healthier children after them. I've been talking about children and investment in my other podcast series, so we will be able to look into that there. Now, the sixth thing is, once people are able to understand that indigenous food and indigenous seeds have value in their own nutritional health, there will be an increased demand for it, leading to a growing and vibrant local food industry for indigenous foods. This will lead into development of research-based quality improvement and industries that add value to natural food for internal use and export. Once people begin to understand the value of indigenous food and indigenous seed, then the demand for it will rise. People will want to have healthier body systems. People will want to live healthier lives. To some degree, people will want to live even longer lives. And the reason behind that is because once they have taken these necessary nutrients, these necessary food items into the body. They are adding nutritional substance into their cells that helps them to live the kind of healthy lives that they want to live. And because of that, it creates an automatic demand for those particular food items. And when demand is created, it means that that particular food item will continue to be produced. There will be more people who will be venturing out to farm these particular foods. There will be more people who will be venturing out to produce more of these kinds of food. And we've highlighted some of the benefits earlier. We've talked about cellular vitality. We've talked about the health of the soil, the aeration of the soil. We've talked about the health of the creatures that are within that soil. So imagine this, or think about this. Once there is increased demand, then those creatures are able to decompose much and much of the natural food waste that they interact with. It means that soil aeration increases. It means that soil fertility also increases. And the ability of the soil to have more and more indigenous crops being planted also increases. It becomes more or less like a food cycle, where we plant, we harvest the necessary food. Of course, some of the leaves and some of the branches that fall off, they are sown back into the soil. Some of that food is being taken by our own domestic animals, the livestock that we have, the cows, the goats, the sheep. They themselves are able to, using their own natural manure, we are able to utilize that back into the soil, and the cycle repeats itself like that. And once that cycle continues to repeat itself, then it means we have a more sustainable food production system. And then the next question now becomes, how do we increase quality? How do we improve the food industry? We now start setting up different plants or different processing plants that allows us to convert that food into forms that can be used locally and at the same time can also be useful for export. Now, this is the long-term advantage of having indigenous food and indigenous seed. People will realize that it actually has nutritional advantages. And once they realize that, they will want to plant it more. They will want to sow into it more. They will want to invest more into it. And once they do that, they are able now to increase its ability to be used within not just their local spaces, but in other spaces beyond the borders. They are able to multiply production of those particular foods, because they have found their health value. They have found their health value not just to themselves, but they have found their health value in as far as what their lifespan will be. They have found their health value in as far as keeping diseases at bay is concerned. They have found their health value in their ability to strengthen their procreation in family, to ensure that their families live healthy lives, to ensure that their children who are raised are also healthy because of the quality nutrition that they receive. The seventh thing is that it becomes a boost for local and foreign exchange earning. Now, this is picking up from the previous point, the sixth point that I mentioned, where there is increased demand for it. If there is increased demand for it locally, it means that will be the main focus of production for the people who live within the country. And once they produce it more and more in abundance, then it means that anything that is produced on top of what has been farmed for local consumption, that can now be exported, because we've been able now to provide and sustain ourselves with adequate indigenous nutrition. That same food item, or those same food items, will now be able to be provided for the international market. Because the international market will be asking themselves, how come these people in this particular country are living healthy lives? How come they are more productive? How come they are more resilient and resistant to disease? And that will in itself introduce an interest within the particular foods that we are taking. And that particular interest is what will invite export, which leads to foreign exchange. People value quality health, especially quality nutritional health, both locally and globally. When we have enough to first sustain ourselves, the principle of multiplication means that more people in the global space will seek to benefit and yield returns for the country through quality export. When quality export now therefore becomes our focus, it means that we are giving out to societies in other countries what has been of benefit to us, and they are able to pay us back for those particular products that we are giving them. And of course, this comes in when they see the value of these food items, these indigenous foods and indigenous seeds to us. And so, even as I conclude this particular episode, I would like to make a particular appeal. And basically, this is from what has been seen, which is evident to all of us. And it is not just evident to all of us, it is also evident to you, Mr. President. As a president of this country, you have the key to allow people to farm indigenous crops. If you are truly looking for the well-being of this country, you will consider the vast natural resource that we have, which is agricultural land. And let farmers use it to farm indigenous crops. If you value the health of your people and their ability to be productive, I therefore implore you to consider making farming these foods a priority for the next few years. And the above benefits, the benefits that I've mentioned, will speak for themselves. So, to the president of this country, kindly consider the importance and the relevance of indigenous foods and crops to the people of this nation. They will live healthier lives. They will have vitality. They will have cellular vitality. They will live longer lives, and it means that they will be more productive in their work. It means that they will start focusing more on the indigenous crops and the indigenous food that leads to that quality nutritional health that they are looking for. We've talked about the issue of disease control as one of the key factors of the government, or one of the key focus areas that the government is trying to handle. The issue of disease will be handled or will be managed by nutritional health. And once the nutritional health of the people within this country has been secured, has been ensured, then that means that it will create in itself a system of production that allows us to export quality nutritional food, and not just quality nutritional food, but export foods that has had quality added onto it through the various industries, the various local industries that will be born from it. And this will in turn increase or add revenue for us. So, Mr. President, I ask you to kindly consider that, even as we look into the issues of food security of this country. Once again, this has been Shem Kalafa for Shem Speaks. See you in the next series. And remember, value the indigenous foods and seeds that we have. They matter to us, and their impact will be evident in our own nutritional health. God bless.